on?
Mm-hmm. Alright, I'm here with Patrick Ryan. He served in the Army in Korea. He achieved the rank of Specials third class. Today is May 28th, 2016. We're here in Lansing, Michigan. I'm his grandson, Timothy Zelke, and this interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress.
Sounds good.
Alright. So, tell me, why did you decide on joining the Army?
Well, at that time, the Korean War was just over, and I knew they were still drafting, so either I could wait and get drafted, or I could enlist. And I enlisted for an extra year with the promise that I could go to a engineering school at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, when I got done with my basic training. And I took my basic at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, and then I went to Fort Belvoir as the Army had promised me, and I went to drafting school there, and then later I had the opportunity, about 6 months later, to come back there and go to map compiling school. So these were courses that I took. They were 3 months each, and though I had to do other Army duty, I would go to school 8 hours a day. And it did benefit me because I ended up being a road technician for the state of Michigan for MDOT, Michigan Transportation Department. And I always felt that if I hadn't had this training, I probably wouldn't have had that job, which was my career and helped me raise a family and so on, and eventually get down to Tim Zelke.
All right.
All right.
What was basic training like?
Basic training was about what I expected. It is a lot of discipline. You're up at 6 and you're in bed at 10, and you're ready to go to bed because you work hard during the day. You go through training, all kinds of training, and basic training is learning how to fire a weapon, fire maybe a machine gun and different things, but M1 was the main weapon that each GI carried with them most of the time, and that was what you got rated on, and you could be a superior rating, excellent, or I forget. I was basically in about the middle, so it didn't matter too much, and I was a fairly decent shot. But they would show you how to throw a hand grenade, fire a machine gun, shoot a bazooka rocket, different things. You went through what they called an infiltration course, where you'd have barbed wire about a foot and a half above the ground, and you'd have to shimmy under that, and you kept your head down because we went through at night, and they used tracers, and they these tracers were red, would show up red at night, and you'd think they were just above your head when they were actually probably a couple feet. But just different things like that. You learned how to cross a swamp on a rope, pull from one side to the other, over a river maybe, but it could be used in a swamp or over water, basically. But there were a lot of other things. You learned how to march. You learned how to say sir, yes sir, and no sir, and it was almost always yes sir. You know that. So they trained you, and some people would even call it brainwashing a little bit, but basically it was just learning discipline. And if you treated people right around you, whether they were officers or cadre being the people that were teaching you how to be a soldier, and it's good training for anybody. I mentioned it a lot of times with other GIs that had gotten out and that I'd talked to, and majority agree that it wouldn't hurt anybody to go through that. You learn a lot about life, and you learn that you have to take a lot of crap sometimes, but it's all worthwhile. And that's probably about it for basic. The second 8 weeks, that was for 8 weeks. And when that's over, you think you conquered the world. Then you go into a second 8, and that's when I went to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, which is about 17 miles outside of Washington, D.C. And so I got into D.C. a lot of weekends and got to see many different things. I spent a lot of time at the Smithsonian Institute, which has a lot to do with our country, and you could spend days there. I spent a couple Sundays, especially Sunday afternoons, there, and you'd have the weekends off mainly, unless you had some type of duty. And it was an experience, and I learned a lot about drafting, about designing different things, and like on road design, why drainage is the big thing. Always your ditches and your grades, and you've always got to have water flow in the right way, and not standing still, and different things, and just different things. And then later from there I went on to Fort Ord, California, and I was assigned to a headquarters company, and which was good duty. Anytime you're in a headquarters company, why you get to you get some privileges that a line company wouldn't get. And so I worked as a draftsman there, and it was good duty. It was at Monterey, California, Fort Ord, and we'd go into Monterey a lot of times and go just different places around California. It was all new to me, being from Michigan. I had never been out of the state hardly, and I enjoyed that. And then eventually I had a chance to go back to Fort Belvoir, and I went back for map compiling, and I spent three months there in the fall, I think, of 1958. And it was quite beneficial for me, and I went back, and at Fort Ord they didn't have a map compiling unit, but they did have up in San Francisco at the Presidio San Francisco, which was the headquarters for the Pacific Coast. And I got into a mapping outfit up there, and enjoyed that. I had a pass in my pocket. We'd go to San Francisco or across the Golden Gate Bridge over to Sausalito and San Rafael, and so you got to see a lot. There's a lot of dead time in the Army too. Maybe after chow at night, why you come back, and if it's towards the end of the month and you don't have much money left, you get paid once a month, and by the end of the month you're pretty well out and nothing to do, and you just lay around and talk, and that's probably the dead time each day, and especially towards the end of the month. So that part of the Army wasn't
kind of drag,
that great.
Boring.
No, a little bit boring there, right? But all in all, why it was pretty good. And then from there, I was almost go TDY, which is temporary duty. I would have come back to the Presidio. I was going to go to Alaska with about 10 other fellows, mappers, and a warrant officer. We were going up there, and we were going to fly up and go to Anchorage, and it was going to be in the summer, so it would have been nice, and then come back on an aircraft carrier, which would have been kind of a neat little deal for me, probably, seeing as I'd never been on one. And,
what were you going to do up there in Alaska?
Pardon?
What were you going to do in Alaska?
In Alaska, we were going to. They had mapped Alaska with flight lines from airplanes, but there were cloud covers in some areas, and we were going up and pick them up, and they were going to refly those areas that had been the cameras wouldn't cover because of the clouds. They were above the clouds, so they were going to refly those. We were going to take and develop pictures from their flight lines and make 8x11 pictures, and we had horizontal and vertical elevations that we could wet these photographs, these 8x11 photographs, and you could stretch them out and then pin them to a certain point, so you would know just where those points were and the distance, so that you would get the photographs as accurate as you can. The center of the photograph is pretty accurate, but the outside edges, there's a lot of distortion. So by wetting them and stretching them this way and that way, and then pinning them, you would have pretty good horizontal control. And you could tell exactly the distance from one point to another. And even though I wasn't in the Second World War, I might look that old, but I'm not. Why they used those, and they even used them so, they mapped some of these freight trains that were going throughout Germany and France and Belgium and Poland, all these different countries. And you could tell from the springs on the freight cars just how heavy they were. So you would know the ones that were carrying heavy
Ammunition
and heavy
guns.
combat material, it's one sort or another, tanks, whatever. Those springs would be, of course, much cramped together. And from those flight lines, you could tell through 3D, you could get a pretty accurate estimate of what was on that train. And that's when your bombers would take off from England and so on, and Europe as we got further into Europe. And they would tell which ones to bomb, which ones had the ammunition, which ones had the heavy military equipment. So it was, when you look through these 3Ds, they're called stereoscopes, and you could set them up and you move two photographs together until they come into focus. So when they come into focus, you could see like a ditch that might be only a foot deep on that. Looking through that stereoscope, you'll see that it'll look like 3 or 4 foot deep. So you got to know what you're doing. But that's how much you can tell vertically just what is happening in the terrain. And it's all beneficial when you're in the service.
Did you use stereoscopes when you were in Korea?
I used, and not in Korea I didn't, because even though I was supposed to go to Korea, my MOS, which was a map guide, I was supposed to go to Tokyo, Japan, but the whole ship was a combat mission, and we all went to Korea. There were 4,000 of us on there, and it didn't matter what you did, you went to Korea, and we